the recent article by former Putin's assistant and ideologist Vladisław Surkov will help us in this, because it very well reflects the collective view of current Russian power and current world order and the Russians' role in it. Well, the article is called "Where the Chaos Gone and the Stability," and this is some kind of a political démarche of Putin's regime, full of wishes, pretenses, threats, and deep resentments. These are the resentments mostly against the leaders of the West for the fact that they still do not perceive Russia as a global force, and must be presented and taken. That must be presented and taken into consideration. And therefore, in revenge for this, it will play mean tricks on whatever it is possible and as much as is necessary in order to be taken into account and agreed with, of course, on its terms. So in his text, Mr. Surkov writes that Putin's coming to power has prevented the further disintegration of the Russian state, which started with the collapse of the Soviet Union. And according to the author, in the last 20 years, Putin has succeeded in creating a stability, and he is confident that it will last for a long time because, as he says, the vertical, the order, and ties are guaranteed. Such his confidence in stability, so-called stability, can only speak of only one thing. So there will be no transit of power in Russia in the foreseeable future. At the same time, the Kremlin is well aware that one of the side effects of aforementioned long-term stability, which it instills in a practically closed Russian society, is an increase of social tension. The Kremlin has also realized that it is possible to remove this tension by loosening the screws and playing democracy, because this is fraught with disintegration processes, which are dangerous for Russia. And the author points it out directly. He said that the fact in theory, the entropy, so this is the term the author uses for social unrest or tension, tends to grow in exclusive closed systems, seems to suggest a simple solution to the problem. Open the system to let off steam and chaos will recede. But such oversimplifications are deceiving. It precarious to set up liberal experiments on domestic political scene. The precisation of the system, so this social vector that works well today, is fraught with uncontrolled emission of civil irritations that can lead to irreversible destabilization. And he reminds of examples from the 80s and 90s. In other words, Kremlin, taught by bitter experience, knows very well that if the steam inside the country is let off, then those irreversible processes that preceded the collapse of the Soviet Union will begin. So in order to deal with the growth of internal Russian social entropy with the least damage to Putin's regime, the author suggests that this entropy has to be taken out somewhere far away, or exported for disposal in foreign territory. So since 2014, we can see how Russia exporting its entropy into Ukraine. And Surkov also directly points to the positive consequences of such actions for the preservation of the current regime in his country. So he said that Crimean consensus is a vivid example of the consolidation of society at the expense of making chaos in the neighboring country. Despite Ukraine is the closest territory for this specific Russian export, it doesn't mean that it is not the only destination for the military intervention in Syria, the sabotages in military facilities of NATO member states, poisoning of enemies, interference in American elections, gas crisis in Europe, the use of refugees to create migrational crisis on the EU borders. This is in incomplete list of examples of Surkov's export of entropy. Given all the above mentioned, it would be quite logical to ask a question, why Russia is behind this war? And Surkov kindly provides us with the answer, in which, however, there is a little reason for our optimism. So he said that the export of chaos is nothing new. Divide and conquer is an ancient recipe. The separation is synonymous with chaotization. So that's the formula. Unite your own people, disunite others, and you will rule over both. The lessening of international tension through external expansion. All empires do this, says Surkov. Other questions also arise. Can Russia behave differently? Does it want to change such its behavior? And the answer is simple, no. And Surkov directly says about this. For centuries, the Russian state, with its stern and sedentary political interior, has preserved itself solely thanks to the tireless standing beyond its bounds. It has long forgotten and most likely has never known how to survive in other ways. For Russia, the constant expansion is not just one of the ideas, but the real essence of its historical being. In other words, Georgia of 2008 and Ukraine of 2014 were just the next stages of Russia's tireless tending beyond its borders. These were the next, but hardly the least, given the fact that Russia has never known how to survive in other ways. Such Surkov's explanation of the logic of its state's behavior should enlighten all those who still do not understand what Putin's Russia is after, and still hope that it can be a predictable and constructive partner, that somehow they can make it listen to reason or come to agreement with. The only obstacle to Russia's realization of the real essence of its historical being is the West, which she hates and which, despite all her efforts to export chaos and create a certain tension, is not only doing well, but is distancing further from her in its civilizational development. Embittered by the West's successes and its counterplay prevented its imperial ambitions, the Kremlin, on the one hand, rattles the chaos generation threat, and on the other calls to the West to accept its vision of the world order and claims to its piece of tasty world pie. So there's the quote of Surkov. And to what extent must geopolitical division escalate in order for the superpowers to develop a new order of existence? If there is no agreement, the turbulent flows made super countries begin to collide with each other, generating devastating geopolitical storms. To avoid such collisions, you need to turn each stream in a separate channel, he suggests. So in other words, the Kremlin is asking a direct question. How much chaos should we export to you so that you finally accept our Tsar as equal to you and agree with our imperial ambitions? And he himself answers, if you do not accept our proposals and demands for the redivision of the world, we'll continue to generate geopolitical storms and turn every stream in a beneficial for us separate channel. So as we can see, the Surkov's article shows us Russia's real plans and intentions for coexistence with the outside world. Moreover, shortly before the publication of this article, and this is not just coincidence, the Russian president, during his speech at the large session with the Russian diplomats, he boasted that he managed to create certain tension in the West. And he said the task for his diplomats to maintain this state of tension in the West for as long as possible. As I mentioned before, Russia will not end up in exporting of chaos in Ukraine. She will move further. And where she can do enough harm to the West, she can do it where it will not be difficult for her and where there are favorable conditions for that. The Balkans is the ideal place for this. Of course, Russia will not behave in the way she behaves in Ukraine. I mean, sending troops and tanks and whatsoever. But she is a smart chaos exporter, which possesses a wide range of hybrid troublemaking instruments. The main thing is just to have the favorable conditions for this. And there are enough of such conditions in the Balkans. We can take almost standard country, and it will have such conditions for Russian activities. This might include, for example, authoritarian regimes, unresolved or frozen conflicts, interethnic and interstate disputes, unresolved historical issues, strong anti-Western and pro-Russian sentiments in some countries, or their dependence on Russia for energy. A separate issue is the rise of Euroscepticism in Balkans, which is due to the fact that the EU cannot understand what it wants in relations with the region and in the issue of its enlargement in general. So all this encourages Russia to act decisively, insolently, and without fear of real consequences for such behavior. There must be a strong response from the West and political will in the countries to counteract Russian malignant activities. To have them, they have to look at things soberly and to call things by their proper names, and mostly importantly, act adequately regarding these challenges and risks that arise. At least they should not create favorable conditions for them. This is the only way they can stop the export of these Russian cows.